order to be successful at our job, any job really, there are things you have to overcome. One of the things you have to overcome is your appearance. Now, don't get all upset just yet. There'll be plenty of time for that as we go through the idea today. But appearance can really hinder your performance in a lot of ways. And it's probably not what you're thinking. In fact, it's worse than what you're thinking. So I want to talk about the appearance from the guest perspective and what they envision. So here's a simple example. I'm 63. I look 63, maybe 62. When I step out at a wedding reception as the MC, I know that there are a sea of young people there that consciously or subconsciously will see me and make an immediate opinion in their brain about, oh, this is an old guy, right? I'm not the young hip guy that they're expecting. So the flip side of that is 23-year-old DJ comes out and starts at the beginning of an event as an MC, and immediately the parents are like, oh my God, got the baseball cap backwards DJ wiggy wiggy guy. And so they're concerned. So that's what we have to overcome. Well, how do you do that? And I'm going to talk about all sorts of different things. I'm going to talk about your gender, your race, your size, your age, all of those things come into play. I'm not going to talk today about the most obvious things. I mean, if it's better to be fit than not fit. It's better to have your hair, looking decent, all that sort of stuff. But as an older DJ, there are things that you can do if you're doing younger events, right? So weddings are a great example. So you dress a little bit more modern. Don't wear really, if you're wearing a suit, don't wear a wide tie. That's not the current fashion. Don't wear button covers anymore. That's done, right? Don't look like that old guy. For God's sakes, don't wear the musical note vest. The 90s are done. We're moving on. So you don't want to go the other way and try to be that, old guy trying to look young with, the ponytail and earring and all that sort of stuff. If that's who you are, it is, but understand people will make a judgment based on that. If you're young, you want to look a little older, right? So you dress a little more conservatively. For me, I think the ideal place for a wedding DJ is probably 30 to 40 years old enough to have a little authority. And I'm talking about really as a master of ceremonies in running the event. Old enough to have some authority, but not too old to turn people off. So, if you look 33, that's an ideal age. So what else? And I talk about this a lot in my workshops. Women have to overcome being a female. That's a tough thing. It shouldn't be, but it is, because and especially I know a few teams out there where it's a female and a male, where the female is the lead, she's the MC, and without exception, they all tell me they have the same thing, that people will bypass her to go talk to the guy, thinking that she must be the girlfriend or the wife or the tag-along, when in fact, she's the one in charge. So you have to overcome that. And how do you do that? Well, one of the things I talk about, for example, is if you're a female, whatever you do, don't use a clipboard. Clipboards are horrible. Clipboards are what you see from wedding coordinators. Nobody likes wedding coordinators. So when they see a female with a clipboard, they immediately dismiss that as the person who's sort of running the behind the scenes stuff. She's in charge of the taping the cards to the gifts. So, but you can use other things, right? Use a folder, use an iPad, something like that. Guys, could we use a clipboard? I don't like clipboards, but that's a prop that works against women that doesn't work against men. If you're small in stature, you think in terms of like stage presence. If you're small in stature, you want to be a little closer to the audience. It makes you appear a little bit bigger. So, if you're 5'4", and $120 in weight, you don't want to be standing in a corner behind your booth. Get out there and be as big as you can, have a presence. The flip side of that is, if you're big, you got to back off a little bit. If any of you do kids events, or just are around kids, it's very intimidating to look up at people, right? So if you're 6'4", and you're talking to a kid, you need to be on your knee down at their level. Imagine talking to somebody, if you're 6 feet tall, imagine that you're talking to somebody who's 12 feet tall, how intimidating that would be. That's what it's like for a lot of people. So if you're big, and I'm tall or wide or just sometimes personality is really big, right? So then back off a little bit, give a little bit of space for that. If you're naturally loud, just in real life, back off a little bit, give people a little bit more space. If you're dark skinned, think about what the lighting is where you're at. We do a lot of events where the lighting is dim, and I see sometimes a black DJ who wears black jacket and a dark colored shirt, and he's back in the lighting, and you don't see anything. It's all silhouette. So how do you fix that? Wear a white shirt. Just still wear the black jacket. Put on a white shirt so there's some pop to that. If you're a conservative looking person, throw some color in. If you're if you're a bigger personality, take a little color out, right? So there's things you can do so that your appearance doesn't become the thing that defines you. So think about all of these things: age, weight, height, race, anything that would look. And if you can do your hair in a way that, like, I want to look a little bit younger, so I dye my hair, right? They're still gray, right? I'm not doing like the dark black thing, right? But just taking out some of the gray. I like having some gray, and I like having some age to it. So there's things that you can do with all of that. So think about all of those things when you go out, and don't get mad, and don't talk about it being unfair, and don't try to be offended over this in any way. It is what it is, and the reality is those are things you have to overcome. If you are a male, 33 years old, and you're 6'2" and trim and very good looking, you have a better starting point. Doesn't mean there's no guarantees, but you have a better starting point than if you're a female who's 57 and 5'3" and overweight, and looks frumpy, right? And I don't mean that in a mean way at all, but then if you're the 23-year-old person that's getting ready to dance, you're like, oh my gosh, we've got the school librarian here. We don't want to do that. We want to have somebody who's more fun. So look at yourself objectively, and when you're young, try to look a little older. When you're old, try to look a little bit younger. Try to have some fun. Play around with it a little bit. I wore a tux for a long time in the business. As I got older, I got rid of the tux because I already had enough old in me, and I didn't need that anymore. So I went to suits, and I wore a pretty conservative suit, but I would typically wear a more fun tie. Nothing crazy, but there's a splash of color with that. When we're in the dance mode, I would usually take my jacket off, whereas my DJ would often leave his jacket on, right? So there's differences with that because he's younger, right? So he was going to look trying to look a little bit older. Anyway, we're way past the minute, but it's kind of an important subject. I know somebody out there is going to have some argument with this and do the whole, it doesn't matter what you look like. It's like, you can live in that fantasy world if you want. We live in a superficial world. Appearance matters, and there's things that you can do. I'm not saying you should be ashamed of who you are, or listen, I earned these wrinkles, man. I'm not ashamed. I love being the age that I am. However, I'm also aware that it's a little bit of something that I have to overcome, and did that pretty successfully. So do that with what you're doing. Go out, have some fun with this thing, and talk to people and say, what can I do to look a little, and then some, so if I can look taller. How do you can't look taller, but you can get closer, right? But see, now if I'm doing this, that's hard to watch, right? It's probably kind of hard to watch from back here too, because some of you may not like looking at this. Anyway, rambling a little bit right now. We're way over the minute this week, but we just completed our first year of doing these things, so I figured I earned that. Take care. See you next time.